Welcome to Bamcast, the Black Art Matters podcast, featuring Darius Colquitt.
Welcome everybody to the BAM digital platform, wherever you're taking in our content, be it on our YouTube or our podcast, or if you're reading anything in the blog. We appreciate you being a part of the family. And I'm so excited because today I get to introduce you to a new member of the family, somebody who I got to meet just a couple of weeks ago, but I am so excited to bring them into the fold. When it comes to creatives, I always get excited because all of us are multifaceted in some way, but when you find someone who's really, really, really good at what they do, it sets your heart to song. And I've been singing for the last couple of weeks, having met this individual. So hopefully you'll enjoy them as much as I do. Everyone out there, I'm so excited to introduce you to a friend of mine and hopefully a new friend of yours, MD Schaffer. How are you, MD?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am so great. And again, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your schedule and your life and just talking to the people for a minute. First things first, I know that there are a lot of us who are artists and we do multiple things and it's just a thing. But if there were, let's say, a 5-year-old or someone much, much younger that walked up to you and said, excuse me, MD, what do you do? What would you say to that individual?
Oh, 5-year-old.
You can raise the bar, but
Yeah.
let's break it down for the people.
Having my brother, my young brother who is now 10, when sometimes, it's like I see his friends and then when they ask me what do, I typically say I write stories for adults to put on stage. Sure, it's like when I'm talking to fellow adults, it gets a lot more complicated and I say I write stories for people to be all crazy in.
So you would say that you are a person who writes stories for people to perform. When do you feel that you knew that that was a thing you should be doing? When were you bitten by the writing bug, if you will?
That's a funny story, because it was through several different times of me dipping a toe in and just kind of forgetting about it, which is something that I recently rediscovered because I was a performer since as long as I can remember. Early memories of being in the YMCA version of Peter Pan, especially coming from two parents who were involved in the arts. I was always somehow in theater, but the earliest instant of me writing, I was 11 years old, and it was a sixth grade book report for my English class, and I was given the option to rewrite the ending for this book called Elsewhere. The name of the author evades me, but I turned it into like a script. And then I just, in that same way that all preteens are in their dark, edgy phases, I was just like, okay, how can we seriously, make this a tragedy? I was in my Shakespearean tragedy bag, and my English teacher was like, wow, you are a sick and twisted individual. I'm like, oh my God, thank you. In that way that all 11-year-olds in Los Angeles want to be oh so different. But then I kind of did my first actual playwriting experience in high school when I was charged with writing scenes for my theater company classes plays, where we would all pitch in and write different scenes, whether it be about HIV/AIDS awareness or the revolutionary movements of the 60s and 70s when it comes to Black rights, gay rights, women's rights. So I was a part of those writing teams. But yet again, I was just kind of like, okay, but I'm still a performer. I'm still a performer. And then when I went to college, I didn't get all the roles that I wanted. And so I was like, okay, let me be a choreographer then. And then I was given opportunities to choreograph several musicals, whether they be with the theater department at Princeton University or with the theater groups on campus. And then well, let's rewind a bit back to high school, because freshman year, I was introduced to the musical American Idiot, the Green Day musical. And that revolutionized how I viewed musical theater. It was definitely the start of my emo phase. And also around that same year, I was introduced to Scottsboro Boys, the musical. It was where I first saw my performance inspiration, Joshua Henry. And I think to see history theater being used for political exploration and historical exploration triggered something in me. And that on top of this introduction to jukebox musicals, like I knew Mamma Mia. I didn't know that we could do that for rock. I didn't know that we could do that for like the stuff that me and my friends listened to. I thought that was for like ABBA, for The Who. So around junior year of high school, I was introduced to sort of like, hey, what was if I could just do this myself? Playing artist discographies on shuffle. It was My Chemical Romance, it was Panic at the Disco. That was like what me and my friends were listening to. And I was like, pop punk as a genre, I felt to be almost unrepresented in musical theater. I still feel like pop punk is still unrepresented. We're still stuck in, I mean, I'm not going to get into my little soapbox of like, focus on contemporary artists. We don't need to go all the way back to what we were listening to in the 80s into the 70s. There are artists now that also feed into what musical theater canon is like. But I digress. Back to college. There was another theater artist, Eamon Foley, who was before my time at Princeton. He did his senior thesis with the Lewis Center for the Arts as a muse rock opera, analyzing the Vietnam War. And it was a gorgeous, gorgeous musical. I had to beg the department to give me the videos that were recorded of that just so I could take inspiration. And that led me to saying I want to write my own jukebox musical. I took inspirations from the French play A Flea in Her Ear, while also taking aesthetics of Edwardian London, kind of exploring sexuality as a primary focus, sex work, polyamory, and queerness as a basis. And then I put and get the disco music all throughout it. So it told the story of this hotel that was secretly a brothel. And it was a sex comedy with all this like sexy peg at the disco music. We had this incredible musician in the faculty, Vince Demira, who was able to help me take all that music to the next level. So we turned all these songs into like, what was if the song Nicotine by Panic at the Disco was actually this sexy burlesque tango.
Wow.
And I was given a lot of resources, but at the same time, they were like, okay, if you're going to do this, you need to take a playwriting class. I'm like, sounds good. And I was given the opportunity to study under playwright Nathan Allen Davis, who, as a Black playwright, he inspired the hell out of me. And he's just like, yeah, man, go crazy with it. He gave me the skills. He gave me so much information on structuring and also how to strengthen beats, how to enhance drama, how to enhance relationships. He also gave me assignment that really changed the game for me, which was recording a conversation between me and a friend, turning that into a scene. So that was an assignment that really I still think back to, and it helped me actually understand the nuances of dialogue, of rhythm, of just how do two people speak to each other in a natural form.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was sort of like my first exploration of playwriting. I dramatized a YouTube series that I was a fan of at the time. Just like, okay, this has a bunch of creepy videos. How do I turn these creepy videos and put them into a universe of theatrical? I was really, Sweeney Todd was one of the first musicals I truly fell in love with. So it became almost like this. I want to explore horror in theatrical settings during that time, around the same time. Same, and also in New Jersey, a high school had put on the theatrical version of the movie Alien. Didn't go get to see it, but I was like, see, this is possible.
That is amazing. And honestly, like, everyone's journey has been a build in some way. There have been many factors that have all come into play to make us, you know.
I will say there was one moment that I was like, okay, I think playwriting is the path for me. It's for one of the questions that you sent me ahead of time that I was wanting to explore too. But you know, we're on the topic, might as well. COVID 2020. So for the first time in my life, I mean, I was born in Houston, raised in Los Angeles for as long as I can remember. But because pretty much the options was living with my mom in New York during the beginning of the pandemic or living with my dad in Texas during the pandemic, I was like, let me be in Texas. I was in my last year at Princeton. So I moved everything down to Texas and I was with my dad for 4 months. And during that time in between, you know, moving down to Texas and then prepping to go to grad school at NYU for musical theater writing, I went back to one of my original loves, video gaming.
Ah, okay.
Um, and as I also mentioned, I was into horror stuff. And around that time, the movie Midsommar had just come out. Midsommar about the cult Ari Aster. Love that film, and I was on this cult streak. I was just like, okay, let me dive deeper, especially because my academic thesis was analyzing horror cinema and American communities. So I was looking at Heaven's Gate. I kept on going back to Jonestown because I found Jonestown to be this. At first, when I was kind of like going through my research of Jonestown, I was like, oh no, because I found that a white man who was saying we must diversify the churches and a person who would not love his brother because of the color of his skin is going to hell. I was like, if someone said that to me in the 60s, I probably would be like, oh no. But also analyzing that kind of mindset of the cult leader as this charismatic person without that sort of insecure head, like voice in your head, was something that was interesting to me. But also, I was living in Texas during the pandemic. So seeing those responses and what was also going down in the pandemic, the Black Lives Matter movement. So living in the South, sure, I was in Houston, but seeing how the South was responding to that was kind of like, oh God. And then I think all of that together, plus playing one game, Far Cry 5, which is a first-person shooter game where you're exploring rural Montana it's a county that's just been taken over by an extremist religious cult.
Yeah.
And I was just sort of like, there's something about driving around in that game, flat land, which as a city kid, I had never really gotten to see. It was like getting inspired while playing this video game. While I have these cultists trying to hunt me, I'm just like, hey, can I just take a drive? Which that inspired me to all that together, living in Texas, cult mentality, and sort of thinking about how it felt like America was almost falling to pieces during that time. I still think America's falling to pieces, but also what is the responsibility of my generation? All that together blended into me writing my first full-length play, Southern Seeds, which is about this Black writer being able to purchase the land that his family was enslaved upon. And the descendants of those slave masters are still there working the land. And it is this play of inheritance. It is this play of generational healing, but it's this play of what do you inherit as burden or as treasure? And how do we sort of end the inheritance of trauma, of pain, and turn that into these breaking of chains into freedom, which is almost, I mean, not to be like, oh my God, I like this about my play, but what I like about that play is that the breaking of chains is not just for the African American character, it's for every character that chooses to be free.
That is outstanding. I can only imagine the process. Well, how long did it take you to finish that piece? Because diving into some of those subjects, I can only imagine took some time.
It took, I mean, I was 22 at that time, and I feel like I didn't understand enough. And I think I hit halfway into the play, and I was just like, I don't know how to go forward. And then grad school was starting up, and I was like, I'm shelving that. Then a year later, I came back to it, and I was like, okay, let's sit down. And I managed to figure out, do the old erase the entire scene that you're stuck on, rewrite it, find the new avenue in. And that worked. And I'm very grateful that I was able to get a little development through a reading with the Ensemble Theater in Houston. They were so kind and so generous to take on this project that explored Southern nuances, which I always found to be, I mean, as a born Southerner, I always found Southern doublespeak to be something of fascination, and the exploration of Texas as this almost monument of America, because there are, I feel like often you can divide different states by, oh, that's the West, that's the Deep South, that's the Midwest, that's the Northeast, that's New England. But often when I see those kind of divisions, then there's like, and then there's Texas, because Texas is its own melting pot of cultures, but it's so fiery down there because of such political turmoils, and you can't encapsulate Texas into one single thing. It is the South, but it is so many different things, because it steals from the Southwest, it steals from the Gulf, it steals from Deep South, it has a little Midwestern. I mean, I think that's often why when I write, I end up going Texas first, depending when it comes to a lot of my ideas. I was able to write another play, which I think we talked about, a Rodeo Clown, that got produced with Ghostlight Productions as a part of the Obsidian Theatre Festival. And that one was centered in Texas too, because I was like, Black man performing in Texas, what does that mean? And rodeo is at the heart of Texas sports. You got football, you got the rodeo.
Yeah, it's a cultural stamp of the place.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, the more you let me talk, the more you kind of see that there is a lot of, I feel like I like to describe myself as a curious mind, because when it comes to these cultural nuances, I'm enamored by them.
I totally get that. Something that I did this summer in relation to the way you've kind of explained your creative process, we finished our season for the year, and I had a good 3 months where there was nothing I had to think about, worry about, or focus on. And I said to myself, I need to grow. There's no way I can be a leader of an organization and I'm only influenced by the things that are surrounding me right now. So in an effort to try to do more, I started connecting with artistic directors and other artists. And I said, okay, what shows are y'all doing? What does your summer look like? Because even though I'm planning a summer for my people, I don't know what the possibilities are. Theater is always changing. It's always evolving. We're always gathering and proposing new thoughts. So to not explore those, I feel like it's a disservice to any creative that's truly trying to grow. So I guess my question out of that, being that you are so caught in nuance and really exploring all of those little intricacies, all those little, nooks and crannies that other people may ignore. Among your pieces, is there one that has enthralled you or has taken you so into the process that you either feel as if it's great as it is, nobody ever needs to touch it or do anything, it doesn't need to be revised? Or is there a piece that you're like, okay, now that I've done this work and I've lived a little longer, I should definitely dive back into it because, man, things have changed?
I always have my parents' voice in my head. I
Mhm.
just, we don't operate a lot on once a piece is finished, it is finished. Even the pieces that have been produced, I'm like, okay, you're done.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
will leave it. I will leave a piece alone. I think that when it comes to needs the least amount of revision, I'm not sure if I can say that about any of them.
Mhm.
Because they are all growing, living, and the more that I work on them, the more that I want to like actually make them to that point where it's like I cannot touch you anymore. I have finessed you to hell. Yeah, but when it comes to a piece that I feel like I'm not ready to tackle it, but I know I need to tackle it one day because it's a wild play. Drapteomania and Negro Carol, a piece that I had written in 2022 through the Executive Witches Play Group out here in New York and was produced by No Dream Deferred as part of the We Will Dream Festival down New Orleans.
Wow.
That play is almost kind of like me hitting, it's like you always got to hit the wall to kind of see where it is.
Mhm.
That is how I would describe that play. It is a play that centers around a mid 1800s piece of medical text, Drapteomania, or the disease that causes Negroes to run away. And it was made by this physician who said all these slaves who are looking to escape slavery are suffering from mental illness because they are either being treated too well or they are being mistreated. And I was like, that's dumb. I think I came across it on Facebook and I was like, oh, that's dumb. Let me just write a play about it. And so it was a play that analyzed, that was kind of like, it took a lot of inspiration from some of what I was being shown at that time. So it was inspired by Michael R. Jackson's A Strange Loop, but also I would like to say kind of the point inspiration, which is one of your other questions of who is an artist that inspires me.
Mhm.
It's has many nods towards, and even like a very out front, like very forward nod to Brandon Jacob Jenkins and Octa Rip.
Mhm.
And that play, has the playwright as a character, like Drapteomania. I mean, and also, yeah, not Dream, but Drapteomania takes a look at this historical piece of text. The playwright is this character who's just like, yeah, let me just explore this because this is wild. And but then the play within the play looks at this interracial couple who's taking a look at the Black Lives Matter. What does it mean to have a kid during COVID? And then the Black father of the couple gets visited by three ghosts of African American liberation past,
Mm.
and he's given the task to be the next great leader of a revolution. But then it means that he has to kind of like, will you give up your body for the liberation of others? Will you give up this opportunity to raise your child for the liberation of others? Which, when I hit that wall, it was a quick like I finished it, submitted it, it got picked up, and I was like, oh no, okay, here we go. Um, And I'm grateful that I had that opportunity. I was grateful to be working with No Dream Deferred. I can only sing praises to Lauren Turner Hines, that entire team, to my director, David Cote, though I feel like if I had to do it again, I would have probably given it some time, or I would have been trying to rewrite, because I think I was tackling far bigger things than I could really comprehend. And it's still, there are aspects of the nuances of African American history that I still am not ignorant of, but ignorant of. And I think when I hit the wall was when I saw that there was a review that referred to my work as didactic. And yeah, I mean, if I kind of sort of get away with all of ego, I can see how it's didactic, because I'd be throwing history at you. Bet you didn't know this. Bet you didn't know that. The climax of the
tidbit.
The climax of the piece was this musical poem that essentially looked at the history of slavery from 1619 to when the last traditional slave was freed in 1943, I believe. Right. But also all this is being performed in Louisiana, where it's like through the penal system. It's like, yeah, forms of slavery are still alive and well.
Right.
But, kind of coming off with that, I was like, this needs work. I'm not sure if I'm ready to work it, because I don't have those skills. And that's all out of all the pieces that have been performed. I mean, I love Drapteomania. I would like to be able to get it to a space, but sometimes, especially as an emerging playwright, which I have to be so honest with myself, I'm still in that emerging. Sometimes getting that world walked on a piece that you call your baby it can be a bit confidence shattering.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm a bounce back, because that's what we do. But it was almost a wake-up call of like, oh, I have a lot to learn.
And honestly, like at the end of the day, as prolific as we can be within our writings, no matter how deeply we go, there will always be something that someone else recognizes that we will never see coming. So the fact that you're open and, recognizing that fact, I'm always learning, I'm always growing, that is what makes you the great playwright you are. So bravo on that.
Thank you.
Yes, keep that, because that will only help you grow. You did just say you feel like you need to acknowledge the fact that you still are, quote unquote, emerging in your own way. You're still growing, but we all have dreams of grandeur here and there. So my question now becomes, when do you feel that, or should I say, what moment will have to occur for you and show you or tell you that you've made it to the pinnacle point? You've made it to a point where you're like, oh yeah, we've done the work, we're here.
Oof, there are several answers to that question. There's the technical neurospicy answer, who said, let me get my 50 plays in. My overarching goal of writing like a piece for every US state, which would kind of require me to start writing about other places than just Texas and California and New York.
Right.
Good luck to me on that. But I think, and then there's the grander answer. I might be on my deathbed and saying like, no, I have more ideas. I have more I need to do. I have more I need to write. And then there's the realistic answer. I mean, there's always going to be the possibility that life will take me other avenues. Where, let's say, I never get the big one of having a show on Broadway, which, what does that even mean nowadays? Broadway's kind of like this crazy hemisphere. But what if I just, what is if I'm successful throughout my life in the way of I work in other places, whether it be like these nice venues and these great organizations elsewhere, cool with me. Um, where, other people are just like, hey, this is meaningful to me. I mean, has quote me if I'm wrong here, and if you don't know, that's also cool. Had Almost Maine ever made it to Broadway?
I don't feel it did.
Which is one of the most produced plays, yeah, in high schools right now. And it's
Yeah,
been one of the most produced plays for the past decade, I feel like. Not to mention, like, a lot of the playwrights who taught me and also who have inspired me. I mean, Brandon Jacob Jenkins has
yeah,
Appropriate going on Broadway right now. Nathan Allen Davis just had the Refuge plays on Broadway. Christopher Diaz has Hell's Kitchen moving to Broadway. And I mean, I've read nearly all their stuff, and I've loved them. I mean, The Elaborate Entrance of Chad Deity by Christopher Diaz has been one of my favorite plays for the past 3 years before I even studied under him at NYU. But, it's like then he gets this opportunity to write with Alicia Keys. That's cool.
yeah.
But not every playwright will get that dream of Broadway. Not every playwright wants that dream of Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost kind of feel like, if I can be happy with the body of work that I put out and inspire others to go beyond me, that's cool. My personal goal is that one day when I have the skills and someone says you're ready, I want to be a playwriting teacher because it's the playwriting teachers who have given me the best mentorship. Working with Nathan, working with Brandon, working with Chris, studying under them and seeing how they navigate these pieces,
Yeah.
I've always been like, I would love to be in your position.
Mm.
I would love to be just like you one day, which almost kind of creates this like, every time that I think about it, I'm like, don't meet your heroes. Don't be your own person, but it's like that's just kind of what it be. Um, and I think that, if I become a teacher, hopefully, and I see my students succeed beyond me, and I kind of smell even like the little bit of oh my God. Uh, when I was watching Strange Loop when I was part of NYU with
Mhm.
the graduate musical theater class, Michael R. Jackson was an alum of the same program. There's one point where he's critiquing his own work, and all of us we heard our teacher in that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we were like, oh, yeah, that's her. And I think that's almost like a goal of mine in a weird kind of like, I want to help support the next generation of writers way of like, let me have a wealth of knowledge from experience so that I see almost the lineages. I think in the last interview I had while I was working with No Dream Deferred, I was talking about, and they asked me the same question about who influences you. I was talking about how Brandon Jake Jenkins, he was influenced by August Wilson. And a lot of my writing almost before I even kind of started really getting into reading all of Brandon's work, I was like, oh no, parallels.
Yeah.
Parallels are there.
Yeah.
And I was like, which is why when I was writing Drapteomania, I was like, okay, let's just be so real. There are parallels here. We're going to deal with it.
Acknowledge them and keep moving.
Acknowledge them, keep moving. And I would love to be, I said this line in Drapteomania, which I always feel weird quoting myself. I am just a flea standing on the shoulders of giants. So amongst the roars of lions, here's my meow. And I would love to be a giant that some million fleas can just rest on. And then once I have my roar, I'm looking up, not looking down. I'm working on my roar. Lion King was the first musical I ever saw, actually. I would like to be, kind of the one of the lions to teach others how to roar and give them that support, because I often feel that, and maybe I'm also guilty of it, that the competitiveness within our industry sometimes takes away from almost the heartbeat of theater. But also but at the same time, there's oversaturation. Everyone shoots their shot for this, and there's like a huge filter, and it's about who can actually get through that filter. But I think at the end of the day, it's like, I want to give support to people so we all can try to get through that filter together and just try my best. If the relationship is healthy, if the relationship is even just like neutral, I'm like, how can I best support you?
Right. I mean, that's something we've talked about extensively. Without each other, we're never going to make it through this journey, this artistic, stream that we're all trying to swim up. But even in that, having the right people with you don't just help you get through that filter, but in many ways, if you're the right group of people, you can dismantle that filter altogether.
That is so true.
And that's always the goal, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What is one common misconception you think people have about being a playwright?
It's a hard one. I saw this question and I was kind of like,
We can break it down even further. What's a common misconception that you think people have about your work in general?
I think that when it comes to my work in general, that it comes from a place of ego. I will never, ever, ever go into a room and say, look at how smart I am. My writing will be, the past Drapteomania and another play that I wrote that analyzed feminism in conjecture to like a Gen Z feminist perspective to Zen Buddhism. Both of them are laden with almost historical exploration and how to explore that from contemporary circumstances, which I think that almost creates that comment of didacticism, because it almost feels like I'm explaining things to you when I'm trying to get you to engage with it. I am not a person who it will say, here's everything you need to know because I know all of this. I'm like, here's everything you need to know. Can you tell me how you're feeling about it?
You specifically know that you write for the purpose of dialogue. Like, you want people to have the conversation afterwards.
Yeah. Another play that I mentioned, which one of Black playwrights who inspire me, Jeremy O. Harris's slave play.
Yeah.
And his exploration of sexuality, of attraction, of interracial relationships in that play, I was always like, fascinating. And I think that was something that really inspired me. I even think with the plays that I want to be writing, I want to explore philosophy, biology. I want to explore these things, not as a top-down, let me explain these concepts to you, person who does not have time to do the research that I do, but let me give you guys, it's same action, just different purpose, different intent. It is, let me give you the information that you do not have time to research in a condensed version that is easy to understand.
Right.
So then you can have your own thoughts about it. That way it becomes accessible. I think that's always going to be at the heartbeat of my pieces, accessibility.
Yeah.
And and if it takes from an educator type standpoint, it's never going to be, here's what you need to know on the test. It's going to be, guys, the world's confusing. Can we all just like talk about it? And I think that really comes from almost this neurodivergent mindset where it is, I always have my own sort of like confrontations with almost readily accepted things. Like, I think it's almost like a hyper focus on American structures and American culture because I'm interested in how it all influences each other. Where does gender lie with religion? Where does the internet lie with feminism? Where does like blackness lie within horror?
Yeah.
Which, I'm grateful that Jordan Peele is real. I mean, we had Tales from the Hood, but Jordan Peele almost took that notion of what is the contemporary Black horror, and he has been giving us some really good stuff.
Yes.
And then I'm guilty of not seeing The Blackening yet, but it is. But to allow us to have these spaces where our Blackness can exist within the horror structure, I'm like, yes.
Yes.
I feel fear too. Black people have anxiety too.
Right. And funny enough, even well, first off, thanks for mentioning The Blackening. Shout out Dwayne and Lisa, those are my people. But beyond that, like when I attended that one in particular, like I've watched all of Jordan's stuff because I feel the exact same way you feel about how he's taking the genre and elevating it to a place where we can also feel as if we can be included. But The Blackening specifically, that cross between horror and comedy, is its own, very unique place. But not just that, the idea of platforming those issues you spoke about, Black people being able to have anxiety and being able to have all of these struggles that we deal with, especially coming from a place where we have been taught that, through religious things, if you have these issues, pray about it, you'll be fine. But even in that story, there are tropes that get explored and debunked. The Blackening story, there are tropes that get explored and debunked because at the end of the day, we all are actually human beings dealing with the same issues, no matter the color of our skin. There's so much more that we're able to explore now with the new freshman class of creators. The ones that are now emerging and coming in and changing up the game, like a Jordan Peele.
Which, I mean, yeah, you take a man who has been doing comedy for so long, of course he's going to know horror. It's the same type of beat sheet, just you have them screaming instead of laughing.
Right. Everything is all based in timing. It is up, as the writer David Ives said, it's all in the timing. What is one thing that right now, within this universe, in this time, in this moment, that you want people to know or hear? It can be about anything. It can be about you. It can be about life. But what's something that you need said to the world right now?
That's hard. That is hard. I identify very much as a leftist, where I believe in, the rights of fellow people. I believe in, dismantling anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, racism, sexism, transphobia. I had the most interesting moment this year. I was visiting a dear friend in Wyoming. It was my first time in Wyoming. And she brought me around her people, and her friends, and they were having this conversation, just like, Republicans, that's where the money is. And it was a black man who said it. And I was just sitting back and listening. I didn't say anything because at first off, I was like, unfamiliar territory. I'm jet lagged.
Right.
I am sleep deprived. I'm not getting into this. But then it made me think. The anxiety of actually where does anxiety come from just my own away from my own belief system.
Mm.
And it almost kind of made me think about where do we place the importance of where do we find more important, especially in those political realms. And from what I heard, they were kind of prioritizing the home, the family, the self, and to make sure that their own microcosm existed. I saw that and I was like, no, I get that, Ben. I understand that you're looking to not just make sure you live comfortably, but your kids live comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about, the rest of my liberal leftist friends. And I thought, we look out for the people we don't know.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And I feel like there's 1,000 different ways that we can explore that sort of nuance of who do we look out for? Are there Republicans out there who don't want their kids to be gay because they've seen how gay people have been treated?
Mm. Yeah.
Are there Republicans who have been told certain things about Black people and they're like, no, I don't want that here because in these other places where there are a lot of Black people, there are high levels of crime, and they don't really go deeper into that sort of thing. Just in the way that if I go to Wyoming and I'm just like, I need to be on guard because you don't know who you're messing with.
I mean, and as people that are a part of the Rainbow Coalition, if you will, there are so many negative thoughts that we already have when we think about Wyoming as a place, being that there is a whole production written about a man who couldn't be himself in Wyoming and was murdered for it, the Laramie Project, So
yeah.
And when you mentioned that, I can only imagine how you felt even being in that kind of space.
Texas, having family in Texas and kind of always visiting Texas while living in LA helps a bit because you kind of learn, your P's and Q's.
Mm-hmm.
You learn when to take a stand. You learn not. Actually, that's always been the most interesting thing when I bring people not like from California or from elsewhere who were in kind of more very liberal areas. Texas, they're just like, I can't believe what these people are saying to me. I'm just like, that's just them. You leave them alone. You ain't gonna change your mind. And they're like, well, how can you just like stand by and let them say it? I'm like, I'm annoyed with them, but you do not need to drive yourself insane trying to change a person who's set in their ways. I do not need to convince a 50-year-old that not everybody who's by the police is a criminal. And that being even like, let's say, like being a drug dealer does not warrant being killed by a cop.
Right.
But it is, I think, if there's one thing that I would want to happen, it's given opportunity to let ourselves and let everybody just get to the heart of actually what is going on. How do we remove ego from the matter? How is it, well, you said, how do we just like, oh, here is what I'm concerned about. Here's what I want. Here is what I really hope for, and here's what I want for tomorrow. Because we can't do anything about the past. We have to think about what comes next. I mean, it's why I like to say I'm a leftist. I care about climate change. I feel the heartbreak for people who are losing their lives right now.
Yes.
I feel frustration for those who are being forced to fight other people's battles.
Yes.
And I understand there are 1700 nuances with every given issue.
Right.
And I think that, and I've always kind of felt that people just don't really look to listen. People don't really, I mean, man, you got me in my philosophy political bag.
Oh, but you spitting so much truth though. Like I'm so glad you're going here though.
And I think the most horrifying part is that I don't know how I even say that in a play. Because
Hmm.
I think if I try to navigate that in a play, it'll be longer than Angels in America.
Dare I say this? Yes, I do.
Oh,
Maybe it deserves to be.
then I'm not going to be ready to write that play for another 25 years.
Well, I'll tell you this: if you want some extra legs to help you run it, you let me know.
I will.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because that topic is long overdue. Long
It
overdue.
is.
I know you said as a leftist, you don't really think past, you think future, but this is one I think might be important just because we are people that are progressing for the next folks that follow us. If you had to think back to little MD or any youth that you may have come in contact with or may have crossed your path, and there was one thing you wanted to say to them to help them keep moving or move to the next thing or not stop where they are, what would you say to either younger you or that child?
I'm listening.
Mm.
As I said, I have a 10-year-old brother. He just got the theater bug himself this year. And he really is liking it. He was raised around arts his entire life, and I often feel like because, you know, I feel like generationally, some people might just not give him a chance because he's a 10-year-old, and they're just like, oh, 10-year-olds, like, what do they know? Like, this kid knows a lot. Sassy little kid, intelligent little kid. He sometimes terrifies me, but I think that when it comes to the youth and when it comes to me, being listened to and being engaged with is always at the heart of humanity and connection relationship. Finding ways to engage, but also to sort of be like, hey, how do we, because I was a rambly little child, I'm a rambly little adult. Um, how do we learn to take the rambliness and put it into action? Helps get through the writer's block, helps get through anxiety, helps get through the just day-to-day questioning of what am I doing? What can I do? Um, and what is there for us to learn, experience, and gain in this world? So then we can not only listen to the next generation, but find ways to actually help them. Because Lord knows we will not know how to help them perfectly because this world is ever changing. My mother, love her dearly. Sometimes what she offers is not applicable.
Right. Right.
Because, yeah. And same with my dad. Sometimes, the beat is different. And with all the experience of age that they might have, they grew up in different circumstances.
Right.
And while I will never know the fear of the Red Scare of the Cold War, I am hyper aware of other fears. What are the fears of internet safety?
Mm.
What are the fears of just like being a young Black mass presenting person in the city? And that's where I think at the end of the day, empathy becomes this really important part.
Mm.
How can you remain empathetic to each other? And that is a part of listening. That is a part of what I try to gain with my writing as a part of nuance, because exploring those nuances in more, what it's like, you have to explore the objective while actually trying to seek to understand the subjective.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's it.
And then at the end of the day, the nihilist in me says, who has the time? Who has that energy? Some days I barely have the energy for myself.
Mhm.
But the humanitarian in me, the one who tries to be optimistic, said, when you don't have the energy, sometimes you just have to keep quiet and just keep ears open, listening. Sometimes if you're listening to someone who actively wants to be understood and not wants to delegate and deliberate and like delegate or demand, listening can be the easiest thing in the world. But
Absolutely.
it takes a person who knows how to communicate their things efficiently. And it takes a willing person, which I think that some people might say that is a naive point of view, but I'm like, is it naive because it is something a child would say?
Hmm.
Or is it naive because we are so set in a way to navigate leadership, to navigate differences? We are so set in those ways that we refuse to see it as almost simple misunderstandings creating this mountain. But my mama always says the only way you can eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
One bite at a time. Yes. That's it. That is
So
it.
call me naive, call me didactic, call me a nihilist, call me overly optimistic, call me unrealistic. I mean, I'm in the industry where fucking with realism is the MO.
Very true. Very true. And honestly, I'd rather just call you MD because I think everything that you said so far it's not a horrible notion to reach for listening and active true listening, not just listening to respond, because we do that all day long. That's why we can't say how are you and give an honest answer. you know
Mhm.
we that's why when I wrote the questions and I sent them out, and the first thing I write is how are you, I write right after that a real connected honest how are you, because if we aren't checking on each other we'll never make it. So
No.
yeah, I'm glad to hear that you're encouraging people to listen and that you are listening yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so this is my favorite part of the interview. So we've gotten past all of the, very if you will, presentational parts of this, the this is me, this is what I do, this is what I believe. I feel like these, even though you are great at connecting as a individual, especially, neurospicy to neurospicy, I do feel like these for everyone are very, very fundamental, you know, human connection questions. So these all be rapid fire. Respond as you feel led. Here we go. What is your favorite word?
Defenestration. Always been my favorite word since I was 15.
What is your least favorite word?
That's spiraling. Okay, spiraling.
Mm. What feeds you?
Connections.
Mm. What drains you?
What's the word for it? Entitlement.
Mhm. What sound or noise do you love?
Ooh, it's okay. It's very specific. It's very specific. But wind over flat surfaces, and that could be plains. It could be or over the ocean.
Mm.
I just like wind in nature.
I concur. I concur. What sound or noise do you hate?
Styrofoam.
Mm.
I look at styrofoam and I just start crawling in my skin.
What profession other than your own would you love to attempt?
Um,
I know this might be a hard one.
I know, right? Because I always said, I mean, I come from a I'd probably end up being a teacher. I mean, I know I already said be a playwright and teacher, but like I would probably end up being a teacher. You could throw me into like math, history, English. Probably not English. I sucked at grammar, but history and math, those were like my things.
The playwright that sucks at grammar. I absolutely love that.
Have you ever met like a playwright who was just like, yes, I am so good at the fundamentals of the English language.
No. I look, being one, no, I've not.
Yeah. Yeah.
What profession would you absolutely, positively, under no circumstances try?
Ooh, that's hard. God, now I kind of, oh, damn it. Have a better answer for this first one, but this one, I would despise being a politician.
Mm, mm.
I do not like, that's such a weight of the world is in your hands type thing. I'm like, I do not like that responsibility. No, thank you. Like, let me do PR. If I have to be in politics, I want to do PR. I want to do marketing. If I have to be. I always, during my edgy phase, I always thought I'd be a great propaganda person.
I mean, you have the mind to mold and shift some things, so I think you'd be great at it.
Hmm.
MD Schaffer, what is your favorite curse word?
I think I say fuck more than most words. Because that's the thing that I say when I'm rushing. That's the thing that I say when I have a good cup of tea. That's the thing that I say when I'm, grabbing something from below and I have to like straighten my knees to like get up. It is the curse word that just it's my blood.
If by some sheer twist of fate we leave here and heaven does exist, what would you like to hear God say to you when you arrive at the pearly gate?
That's that. Ooh, that'd be a twist of fate for sure. So about all that witchcraft, I, I have I delved into it. Yeah, I've gone a lot of, that is a place where there's a lot of community. Surprisingly, a lot of theater makers are in that.
I'm not going to talk about the amount of witches I know. I'm not going to talk about it.
They're
But
so fun.
I will absolutely say there's no way I will have gotten this far in my career without the witches that have helped me along the way. I give
Mm-hmm.
I give them much respect and much love for everything they've done to back me up.
Yep, I often, they are great teachers, they are great friends, they are great collaborators.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh yeah, there's a reason why I feel at home with you guys.
And when you consider that a lot of that is rooted in our history,
It's
there's a
this
reason.
is
There's a reason we connect to it so well.
it absolutely is our history. I'm often half Jewish over here, so I'm often drawn to Hasidic uh paganism as well as African American voodoo, witchcraft, African, and just sort of what is the heartbeat of Southern paganism, because that is just so fascinating to me of ritualism. I mean, hey, I was talking cults earlier, but I was just like, there's something so profound about ritualism throughout history. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember, and one of my favorite things is seeing like archaeologists being like, yeah, whenever we can't explain anything, it's a ritual. And like,
Right.
and I'm like, okay, but you actually might be right though.
I love that. Everybody, that is MD Schaffer. MD, thank you so much for joining us, for taking a little bit of time out to just allow us to get to know you and what makes you the amazing artist that you are. This is now your moment, your platform. Whatever you have going on, share with the people. If you don't have anything, so promote whatever you are looking to do. So,
Okay, I have nothing going on right now except for writing 1,000 different things, but keep an eye out for I'll do my little like this is my manifestation hour. This is like let me just manifest these projects. If anyone's interested in supporting an emerging artist with these, let me know. I'm looking at analyzing multiculturalism and biracialism, especially through a musical. I'm looking at exploring Black horror, murder mystery, Black nihilism through a play, and also looking at exploring ecology, American politics through another piece. But also, I just talk to me, hit me up on the Insta, hit me up anywhere because I'm always looking to collaborate, write some new pieces, and just sort of like build the community because I think that the best way to bring out the best in each other is supporting each other, uplifting each other. You cannot get to this top alone. And also, if you already you got your own communities, look to see who's creating new works. What theater companies are in your area that are looking to support newer artists. The classics are great for a reason, but who might be amongst them? I'm not trying to say that I'll be a person they'll call the classics one day, but talking about supporting BAM, for instance, I got people in New York City trying to get their upstart, and when I have the opportunity, I like to support them as I can, because that's what's important here. We talk so much about fostering the next generation. The emerging people are already on the move. Let's get them going.
that's it. And again, that's MD. Everybody, thank you for coming for this amazing episode. Again, wherever you're watching or listening, we're glad you are, and we're so glad to have you as a part of BAM Digital. We will see you all with a new episode very soon. Till then, peace, y'all.
This has been another episode of Bamcast, the Black Art Matters podcast, offered to you exclusively through BAM Digital, a subdivision of BAM Talent. To find out more, go to our website, www.bamtalent.org.